So, good morning, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. This is, in case you weren't aware, today is like National Youth Pastor Preaching Day. It's a Sunday after Christmas, like all over the country. Senior ministers are like, I'm done with it. I'm just, give it to the youth guy. So, thank you for coming out to see Second String. I'm glad you're here. It's a great day. If we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Elliot. I'm the student minister here, and I get to work with some amazing students and parents and volunteers. And I feel lucky and blessed every day to have the job that I have, just hanging out with kids, and I get to pretend like I'm younger than I actually am. It's truly the hashtag blessed life. I'm glad you're here, and I want you guys to, I'm going to ask you a question, and then you're going to turn to like the people around you. And we do this sometimes. It's okay. This is entry level, easy to answer. Don't panic. The question is, what is the best Christmas present you got this year? So go ahead, talk to people around you. What's the best Christmas present you got? You won't get in trouble for talking. And then we could flip it, like, what's the worst Christmas present you got this year? Don't tell, if you're sitting next to the person who gave it to you, though, don't tell them that. Just something else. And I got family here, so I know their answer isn't mine. So I remember pretty vividly the worst Christmas present I got. I maybe 8 or 9 years old, and I had wanted this remote control car so badly. And Santa came through that year. It was excellent. It was the right car. It was the right color. Everything about it was exactly perfect, exactly what I wanted. It had on the remote, had this trigger thing that when you pushed it, the front wheels would flip like a tornado kind of thing, and it would fumble all over the place and go all over the place. It was the best Christmas ever. And it's Phoenix, Arizona, so it's 90 degrees on Christmas Day. So I'm, of course, going out into the cul-de-sac to play with my new remote control car. And at some point, my brother and my dad and my uncle and my grandpa come out, and they're watching me play around with my little remote control car. And eventually, I think it was my brother first, hey, can I have a turn? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Sharing my remote control car because I'm a good brother, no big deal. And he's playing with it, and it's all great. And I'm like, hey, let me have a turn now. It's your time's up. Let me have a turn. But he wouldn't. Can you imagine the nerve of an older brother not sharing my toy back with me, or however that works? And eventually, the controller gets passed along to my uncle, to my grandpa, to my dad. It goes through the whole thing, and they're just passing it back and forth. And I decide I'm going to put an end to this. I'm going to pick up that car, and they won't be able to play with it, no matter how many people have the remote control. Except little 8-year-old Elliot doesn't think, if I go after the car, they're just going to drive the car further away. So I spent a good 5 or 10 minutes, longer than I'm embarrassed to say how long it was. I spent a long time chasing this thing, and then they would do the trigger thing, so it would change directions. It was terrible. And then I stopped dead in my tracks, and I realized, the remote control. And I stomped over to my uncle or dad or whoever had it and grabbed it. I'm taking my ball and going home. The worst. The present was great, but the experience that came with it was just the worst. I played with it still. It was a fine present. This year, I had a milestone. I got to be a part of somebody's worst present ever. So that's real dad success right there. This belongs to my daughter, Journey. This is a cloud pet. It's a great idea. They can push a button and record a message that goes to the parents' phones, and parents can record a message that goes back onto the animal, the stuffed animal. And it's a great idea. So we unwrap it. It's from my mother-in-law. She did a great job. It's excellent, snuggly stuffed animal. And we're trying to download the app to set it up. And we find out that there was some data breach with the Cloud Pets organization. And so they shut down. The app isn't available. Evidently, these things are really easily hacked too. And so being the technically minded person I am, I'm I bet I could hack it. I bet I could figure this out. And sure enough, give me 4 minutes, and I got this thing controlled from my phone, and I'm okay, we got this work around, we can record a message, it's going to be great, and Journey's going to love it, until this happens. Exterminate, annihilate, destroy. So if you're not familiar with Doctor Who, that is the chief villain, the Daleks, yelling, "Exterminate, annihilate, destroy." Somewhere along the way in my hacking, it seems like, honestly, like that's the best regift ever to a child who doesn't know that it's coming. Like, here, this thing's going to play a nice gift for you. This is how the robot uprising happens. And we all know it. So like we thought we recorded a good thing, and then like, "Hey, Journey, come here." It was the first time I got kicked in the shins as a parent. I'm pretty sure like I scarred her pretty well. So I'll let you know how much those therapy bills are later on. But the best gift I got, I think, this year is like really simple. It's this mug. My wife got it for me, and it combines my love of interesting mugs, my chemical dependency on caffeine, and like it's orange. It's my favorite color. It's perfect. This is everything. And she knows I can't stand still or sit still, and so it's got a lid on it. This is like the perfect gift. It's so good. But the more I think about it, the more this gift might represent different times I've seen in my life. Like there have been episodes, seasons in life where just like everything is awesome, everything is great, everything is lining up and falling into place perfectly, and life could not be any more of a gift. But there are other times where life is just an unimaginable instrument of terror. And things get dark, and things go dim, and life is tough. And that's actually been the case for like all of time. And if we're trying to live life in some proximity to this God character, that's even more challenging. The highs and the lows, the ups and the downs. It's confusing, right? We just went through this whole series the last few weeks, if you've been around, this whole season, really, where we're celebrating this God with us, this Emmanuel, in the form of Jesus, God coming into the world. But then now what? Now what do we do? Are we going to choose to live with God? Because if you remember, like back to college, you may have had a roommate, but you may not have had any choice in that matter. And if that was you, you know very well there's a difference between sharing a space with somebody and living with somebody. So God has chosen to live with us, yes. But the challenge for us is, are we going to choose to live with him? Are we going to choose to live according to his ways? Or are we going to choose to do what's right in our own minds? And this struggle, this choice, this challenge has been around from the dawn of time. Adam and Eve, man and woman, humankind. God created them and set them like this crown jewel of creation and said, you have a choice. You can live with me, or you can choose what's right according to your own mind. Unfortunately, they chose the latter, and there was pretty dire consequences. Generations came, generations went, and God said, I'm pressing the reset button. Things have gotten so bad. Noah, you're my guy. Everybody else is out. I'm going to start over with you. You're going to be the one who finally figures out how to live with me. I'm living with you. Will you come and live with me? Things look all right for a while, but then Noah fails. Generations come, generations go. Another family is picked out, Abraham and his descendants. You are going to be the chosen vessel, the one that sets everything right. You're going to be the guy. And things look promising. There's going to be this land that they inherit. But even Abraham and his son Isaac and his son Jacob, they miss the mark. And Abraham's family finds themselves enslaved in Egypt. And surely this is not how things were supposed to go. Surely this isn't what God had intended. God's supposed to live with us, not lead us into slavery. And then finally, God raises up Moses. And if anybody in this whole long chain of humanity is able to figure out how to live with God, it's going to be Moses. Like he has conversations face to face with God. He received the Torah, the 10 Commandments, the law, whatever you want to call it. He received that from the very mouth of God. Surely Moses is going to get it. But again, Moses misses. And after Moses' time, we see a shift from God choosing individuals and using this country rather than just a person and saying, you guys are going to be where my presence is. I'm going to live with you, and you have the choice. Are you going to live with me? And as Moses' successor takes the reins, say that 10 times fast. Moses' successor. As Moses' successor, Joshua, takes the reins, he is leading this nation of Israel into this land that was promised to them for generations, flowing with milk and honey. And they have one job: get rid of the inhabitants in the land, these Canaanites, these people who are already in the land. You got to get rid of them for two reasons. One, they are morally corrupt, bad dudes. Two, they have these pagan religious practices like child sacrifice, like nasty stuff. And if you guys move in and surround yourselves with them, it's going to end badly. And so the book of Judges begins by saying they didn't finish the job. They failed to drive out these Canaanites. They failed to complete the project that they had set out on. And so they moved into the neighborhood. They moved in next door to the natural inhabitants, the Canaanites, and they essentially became Canaanites. They lost their distinctiveness, their uniqueness, the thing that made Israel so different. In Judges chapter 2, the whole chapter summarizes really well what the whole book is about. But we're going to read just starting in verse 10. After that generation died, another generation grew up who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things he had done for Israel. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight and served the images of Baal. It's one of the false gods the Canaanites worshipped. They abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They went after other gods, worshiping the gods of the people around them, and they angered the Lord. They abandoned the Lord to serve Baal and the images of Ashtoreth. Just like God said, if you move in with these people, it's going to be bad news. I want to live with you, and I want you to choose to live with me, but if you guys surround yourselves with the wrong kinds of people, it's not going to end well. And over the whole rest of the book, we see this cycle happen again and again and again. First, Israel sins up there at the top. They have like these idols that they're worshiping, the things that the other nations are doing. They follow suit. And so God allows this other nation, this other power, this oppressor to come in, sort of like a divine timeout, I guess. And things get bad. Things hit rock bottom. And so Israel finally comes to their senses and says, God, we messed up. We need your help. Please, will you save us from this oppressor? And God does. He raises up one of these judges. And you shouldn't think of judges like gavels and courtrooms and curly white wigs or anything like that. More like a military leader, like a chieftain, tribal chieftain or something like that. And these judges raise up armies sometimes, just by themselves sometimes, and they rescue the people. They get rid of the oppressors, and there's peace and prosperity in the land. And for some generations, the Israelites choose, God, we will live with you. This cycle repeats itself over and over again. And the interesting thing, as old as this story is, we're talking 2,000, 3,000 years, I can see myself in that cycle. I can point to different seasons in life and say, yeah, that was peaceful. That felt oppressive. That felt like rock bottom. I can point to different parts of my life and place them in different parts of that cycle. And I have a hunch you could do the same. This cycle repeats itself over and over again, up and down, valleys, mountaintops, highs, lows, sort of a sine wave if you're nerdy like me. Over and over again. And the question I have for you is, where are you in that cycle? As 2018 comes to a close, as a new year is upon us, where do you find yourself in there? And if you could choose to move the needle in 2019, where would you move it to? Where would you want to see yourself? So now turn to your neighbor. We're going to answer. I'm just kidding. Got you. So these judges were the ones who who raised up and rescued Israel. And I want to zero in on one of the first ones. So while throughout the course of Judges, the book of Judges, this cycle is happening over and over and over again, up and down, up and down, up and down. But the nation of Israel is on a very downward trajectory. It's like a downward spiral in the midst of all that. So at the beginning of the book, the judges are pretty good. Then they go to okay, then they go to bad, then they go to absolutely terrible. We're going to look at the story of a guy named Ehud. Everybody say that with me together. Ehud. It's a fun name, right? You don't hear that very often. Ehud. If you're Hebrew minded, it's Ehud or something like that. I'm not fancy enough to say it that way probably. But Ehud is actually one of the good judges. And he does a pretty good job. So let's read his story. You may not have heard this, and I'm excited for you. This is Judges chapter 3, and I'm going to start reading in verse 12. Once again, the Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight, and the Lord gave King Eglon of Moab control over Israel because of their evil. Eglon enlisted the Ammonites and Amalekites as allies, and then he went out and defeated Israel, taking possession of Jericho, the city of palms. And the Israelites served Eglon of Moab for 18 years. That's a long time. 18 years of oppression. 18 years in the bottom of a valley. 18 years at rock bottom. It's a long time. That's a whole generation almost of people growing up knowing nothing but this oppression. Let's keep reading. When the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, the Lord again raised up a rescuer to save them. His name was Ehud, son of Gera, a left-handed man of the tribe of Benjamin. Keep in mind that left-handed thing. That will come important later. The Israelites sent Ehud to deliver the tribute money to King Eglon of Moab. So tribute money is sort of protection money. If you're involved with someone who may have ties to organized crime, you got to pay them protection money so they don't come and rough up your business or something like that. So we've got the plot of The Godfather playing out here in Judges. They're giving tribute money to King Eglon. So Ehud made a double-edged dagger that was about 1 foot long, and he strapped it to his right thigh, keeping it hidden under his clothing. He brought the tribute money to King Eglon, who was very fat. Now, I just love how the Bible just sometimes puts it like it is. Dude was large. And back in the day, that meant prosperity. If you have enough to overeat, if you have enough to indulge yourself to that extreme, you must not be hurting for money. Way to go, man. Nowadays, it just means we're too close to the holidays still, and I know what my New Year's resolution is. Back then, it was a good thing, though. After delivering the payment, Ehud started home with those who had helped carry the tribute. But when Ehud reached the stone idols near Gilgal, he turned back, he came to Eglon and said, "I have a secret message for you." So the king commanded his servants, "Be quiet!" And he sent them all out of the room. This is the cool part, guys. So remember, he's left-handed, right? So where are my left-handed brothers and sisters? Yes, thank you, all of us. You all know we are the chosen people. I don't know, I know you normal people don't know what it's like, but it is hard living in a right-handed world. Thank you. It's difficult. It's a challenge. Every day I come up against something, normally something as simple as handwriting that you have no problem with, but just smudge. So I've heard this statistic, and I've tried to verify it, but I just haven't yet. So left-handed people die every year from using or attempting to use right-handed equipment. I don't know what kind of equipment, lawnmowers, chainsaws, scuba gear, I don't know what. It sounds plausible to me, I just don't know if it's true. But more people die that way, under those circumstances, than die in a shark attack every year. Again, I hope it's true, just to prove it to you guys. But what I do know is every time I try to use a pair of right-handed scissors, I am taking my life into my own hands. And there's a non-zero chance that someone around me is going to get hurt by accident. It's challenging, guys. Ehud has this challenge. But because of that, he's given this private audience with the king, and he's got a weapon. See, if you are familiar with firearms, you know that you draw a pistol from the same side that you're going to shoot with. But with a sword, you draw it from the opposite side. You reach across, draw it out, and then use your sword. So I guess back in the day, either left-handedness was less common and people didn't think of it, or people were just short-sighted enough Like, yeah, they're never going to use their left hand for this. Let's just pat them down on the left-hand side. There's no way they're going to put something over here on the right. Like, that just wouldn't happen ever until it did. So Ehud is in a private audience with King Eglon, his oppressor, and he is strapped. He's ready to go. I can't wait to see what happens. Verse 20, Ehud walked over to Eglon, who was sitting alone in a cool upstairs room, and Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. As King Eglon rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand and pulled out the dagger strapped to his right thigh, and he plunged it into the king's belly. Gross. The dagger went so deep that the handle disappeared beneath the king's fat. I don't even know if I want that thing back now. So Ehud did not pull out the dagger, and the king's bowels emptied. I definitely don't want it back now. Then Ehud closed and locked the doors of the room and escaped down the latrine, or like down the porch. He took the back way out. So this is like James Bond stuff here. After Ehud was gone, the king's servants returned and found the doors to the upstairs room locked. They thought he might be using the latrine in the room. Remember the smell? So they waited. But when the king didn't come out after a long delay, they became concerned and got a key. And when they opened the doors, they found their master dead on the floor. This is not a theologically important question, but I'm curious how long they waited. Like an hour? I mean, like if the king's doing his business, he's the king, he can do what he wants. 2 hours? Surely they did not wait overnight. That would just be like, no. So they walk in, they finally like get a key, open up. Oh no, this has happened. This is terrible. Bad news. And it's because Ehud used his like uniqueness, his left-handedness, this challenging Christmas gift that he got for God's purposes. Ehud ends up mounting a successful military campaign against Moab. And the story ends with verse 30. So Moab was conquered by Israel that day, and there was peace in the land for 80 years. 80 years is a long time. Long time to spend at that plateau, that high point. That's generations of people raised to know that there is a Lord that they serve, that there is a God, and that they are living with him. All because Ehud used this seemingly inconvenient attribute about him. So the question for us is, what do we have? What Christmas gifts have we been given that God might be able to use? Maybe it's our left-handedness for the special among us. Maybe it's your time or your talents, some resources you've been given. And how is God leading you to use those? How is God leading you to put those things into practice for his cause, his purposes? So these judges, like Ehud, another one was Deborah, another one was Samson, if you remember Samson and Delilah. These judges were like temporary rulers, and they kind of pointed forward to what was going to come. They continued the trend of people God was choosing. Remember Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Noah, I did that one already, didn't I? Moses, that's the one. Remember all those guys that got close to demonstrating, close to exemplifying what this with God life looks like, but just barely missed the mark. These judges were in the same vein. So they're drawing like this picture, this image of what was going to come ultimately in Jesus. Like maybe it's not a great picture though, but like if you ask like a 5-year-old, like, hey, draw me a picture of a person. And like you're, okay, I could kind of see that. Maybe like a rocket ship or something, but no, you say it's me. Okay, cool, excellent. Not a great picture, but they're painting a picture of what's to come. And unfortunately, the cycle repeats itself over and over and over again in this book. And the book ends with a couple of really nasty episodes. Like this one dude builds his own temple with idols and statues and stuff like that for his, like in his own part of Israel, and these people come to it, and then these other Israelites ransack the place and rob it, and then they go to this other town and like burn it down with the people inside it. Like, it gets ugly, it gets violent. It's gross. And then there's this other story, the last story in the book of Judges, ultimately leads to Israel's first civil war among themselves. And all of these are actually some of the stuff that makes the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, remarkable. Like a lot of ancient history texts will do a really good job of painting the main characters in a positive light. But the Old Testament is so good at being transparent, at pointing out flaws, and at being a cautionary tale. This is what it's like if you choose to do what's right in your own mind, what's right in your own eyes. In fact, the last few episodes are punctuated with that same sentiment. The very last verse in the book of Judges, and it's repeated 4 different times in the final chapters. In those days, Israel had no king. All the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. And it's pointing towards what's coming. It's pointing towards kings, towards prophets, who are all going to be images, who are all going to be paintings of what's to come further on down the road, but they're all going to fall short. And the people of Israel are left with this sort of uncertain ending. They're not really sure where the story is going to go next. They don't really know what's coming down the road. And for us too, 2019 isn't written yet. 2019 holds limitless possibilities, but also limitless challenges. We don't know what's coming, but we do still have a choice. We can choose to listen to God, or we can choose to do what's right in our own mind. God has shown himself that he wants to live with us, and we get to choose if we're going to live with him as well. We're going to choose if we're going to listen to what he says or do what's right in our own eyes. And my hope and my prayer for all of us in this room is wherever your story is going, choose to go with Jesus. Choose to take him with you wherever 2019 may lead you. Let him be in the driver's seat. Give him the reins. Let him inform your thoughts, your decisions, your path. And what could 2019 look like for you? How could this year be different from last year? How could God use your talents, your skills, your resources, whatever it is you have to offer? How could God draw you closer and closer to him through that? Throughout the year. How could it be different? Okay, so you get 2 pieces of homework. I couldn't let you go all winter break without homework, so here they are. Number 1, make a choice. Next year is filled with uncertainties. Make a choice of how you're going to respond to them. Make a choice of what attitude you're going to bring into the new year. You're going to be like the Israelites who did what's right in their eyes, or are you going to be different? Are you going to choose to live with God? Number 2, figure out something that you have that you can offer. Maybe your left-handedness, if you're lucky. Maybe it's clearing some space in your schedule so you could mentor some teens. Maybe it's opening up your wallet a little bit more. I think our friend Andy Bell, and he doesn't know I'm about to talk about him. Our friend Andy Bell is an excellent example of that. He saw his carpentry and woodworking skills, and he saw a need in the city of St. Louis, and he said, okay, God, whatever you're going to do, I'm yours to use. Where's God going to lead you? And what's he going to use of yours to impact the world? Starting with St. Louis. Let's pray. God, thank you for today. Thank you for the chance that we have to be with you, to worship you. God, give us guidance over the coming years, over the coming weeks and months. God, just lead our steps, our hearts, our minds. Help us to give ourselves fully and completely to you, to put you in the driver's seat. God, help us to carry you along wherever you may go. Help us to, God, choose you above everything else. We love you, and it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.